Hi, Gita. Welcome. So, it's been more than 5 years now, in February 2017, when you assumed the leadership of NORRAG. The deal between the two universities, Geneva Graduate Institute and Columbia University, entailed a 5-year part-time secondment to the Geneva Graduate Institute. So for 5 years, you were part-time full professor at the Institute, in charge of building the field of comparative and international education, and at the same time serving as part-time academic director for NORRAG. For the past 5 years, you spent the fall semester in New York and the spring semester and part of the summer in Geneva. So how was that arrangement? That is, that split appointment between New York and Geneva on the one hand, and then between the Graduate Institute and NORRAG.
It was a privilege, actually. It was a big honor. It happens to be that both universities are really flagship universities. They are great in what they're doing. Teachers College, Columbia University, is the biggest graduate school of education with a very long-standing program in comparative and international education. It dates back to 1898. And the Graduate Institute is the flagship university in Europe that does international relations, international studies, development studies, and it started operating in 1927. So I just felt lucky from the get-go being here and filling that space in between. So I went back to New York with ideas on international relations, on international studies. Here I brought education, comparative education, so I felt very fulfilled and it was a rewarding time.
And then between the Graduate Institute and NORRAG?
This was very special. First of all, even before I started, the mission of NORRAG I deeply believe in. The belief that we should try harder to surface, amplify, and disseminate knowledge from the Global South, empower experts from the Global South, build a bridge between research and policy and planning. And I believed in it from the beginning. And NORRAG already had a history of over 40 years doing that. So I was able to build on it. The second thing is I'm wearing 2 hats usually, and it was like a homecoming, because the first 10 years of my career, I worked in the Ministry of Education in Zurich. So I was policy analyst, or I was, some countries call it sector research. I did R&D, research and development, on multicultural education in the ministry, but it was policy evaluation, policy analysis, it was applied work. Then for the rest of the career, I did foundational research in education and comparative ed. NORRAG, again, filled the space in between. It's a knowledge broker, a critical knowledge broker between producing research and using research, and it's translating research. And I felt this is exactly, I started like that, and towards the end of my career, I'm bringing that back into my work. And finally, I'm Swiss, and people don't know that. I'm Iranian, Swiss, American, in that order, in that sequence. And coming back to Switzerland for 5 years, contributing to this country and this region was very special to me. And I took it very seriously. So from the beginning, I agreed to serve on a really important committee of the Swiss government, actually. It's called Advisory Committee for International Cooperation. I believe in it, and I believe of strengthening Swiss development and cooperation in talking about the Swiss comparative advantage in aid and development. I was able to do all that. So it was really a homecoming, coming to work for the Graduate Institute and for NORRAG.
That's wonderful. And so what did you find attractive about NORRAG and the Geneva Graduate Institute when you accepted the appointment?
It really was the location. In international Geneva, it was this bridge function, it was the reputation, it was all of what I just mentioned before.
And what have been for you some of the critical milestones in NORRAG's development over the past 5 years?
I would say there were like three things. NORRAG was always known for NORRAG News. Kenneth King did that for many, many years. It was known for blogs. So when I started here as an academic director of NORRAG, we decided at that time to diversify these knowledge products, call them, but also not in terms of just of moving away from print and blogs and adding like podcasts and videos and webinars and other things, but also diversify in terms of guest editorialship. Mm-hmm. So what we really tried to do and took very seriously is to have, as our mission says, experts from the Global South. Mm-hmm. We had changing series, book editors, changing NORRAG Special Issues editor, which is the follow-up product after NORRAG News, because more people needed the opportunity to speak and to be heard, and to be written and to be read. And we did that, and I think that was a good decision. And we have many more communication outlets, because this is a communication age. We try to take that seriously, to diversify in terms of modes of communication, but also in terms of individuals that share and edit and become conveners of webinars and of books and etc. That was one big step. The other thing that made a big difference in terms of our visibility, but also contributing intellectually to ongoing debates in the field of development, we started to do projects, and only very selectively, only projects that were in our mission of knowledge brokerage, of amplifying knowledge from the Global South, of tapping into dark spots, unexplored spots, surfacing them. And we did that very successfully. So we managed to really get into that new space of private sector engagement, always with the vision of how the private sector impacts equity, inclusion, the pros and the cons, always with this brokerage role, trying to get people on the same table that very often don't speak with each other. And Arushi Terwe was great in that. She brought a few grants that were really important for getting visibility as a think tank that is committed to equity and inclusion. And for instance, one of the big grants that Arushi helped to bring, it's called Leaving No One Behind in Innovative Financing in Education, just to give you an example. And whatever we do in every field, in every project we do, it's open access, it's for everyone. We are not a competing international organization, as so many are these days. We are all about linking, connecting, sharing. So that one was also financially good. These were funded projects, these were grant proposals, multi-year projects. It gave us a continuity, and it gave us financially a breathing space. We still get funding, and very generous funding from the Swiss government, from the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, but we have a matched funding requirement. So it was these funded projects, but again, let me reiterate, only in projects we believe in, and only in projects, we were not desperate for projects. We were really trying to increase our visibility. So that was a second big milestone, I would say. The third one is your field, Moira, networking. I mean, we are a network. We are not an association. We are not only, I mean, I say only, that's already a big accomplishment, a center of the Graduate Center, but we are also a network. We have over 5,000 members. Right now, feeling the meaning of what does it mean to be a member in an era of platforms and websites and organizations, what does it mean? And what you're doing, with the South also knows hashtag, but also your networking tool. These are all ways to mobilize members who believe in the NORRAG mission. And I think when you came on board, that's when it really started to do. I personally didn't do much on it. I was just supporting your ideas. And I think there's a lot of growth in that area, actually.
And so, Gita, what else?
There's so many projects we did. I don't even know. I don't want to leave any out, but maybe two that are very special. One is KICS, Knowledge and Innovation Exchange. NORRAG has been selected as the hub for the region Europe, Asia Pacific. There are 4 hubs altogether. It's funding from Global Partnership for Education, but it's administered at the global level by IDRC. Well, IDRC is very important for NORRAG. It's the International Development Research Center. And as many will know from the interview that Michel gave to you, the conversation he had with you, IDRC was the original funder of NORRAG. And there's a long, interesting history to it that I would encourage everyone to watch that video too. So that KICS project is extremely important to us because it is so much 100% in line with what we believe. And in fact, in the proposal, we said we are all about surfacing, amplifying, and disseminating knowledge from the Global South. And this is exactly what KICS does. And it does not only disseminate, it wants to bring it to scale. So we believe 100% in the approach that KICS has. We work in 21 countries of that region. And José Luis Canellas, he is the manager, the hub manager. He has a whole team that supports him. He does an amazing job. The team does an amazing job. And I really think I could talk endlessly about KICS because I stay involved in KICS. I think we really make a difference in how issues of ownership are really taken seriously and of local knowledge and decolonial. Everyone talks about decolonial, but KICS, if we really implement it, NORRAG anyways, has been, that's the foundation of NORRAG, committed to a decolonial approach. But KICS has also that potential, and we try to really implement it to have really local expertise and local ownership. This is one. Another example is the digital education one. I have not been involved. You have been involved together with Anna Numa Hopkins. And your team has supported the special rapporteur on the right to education. Her name is Dr. Kumba Bolibari. And it has been a huge success because everyone talks about the opportunities of digitalization, and your group really looked into the impact it has on the right to education and cultural rights, minority rights, etc. So it's again within that mission of trying to shed light on issues that are not being discussed, surfacing important topics, especially topics that have an impact of minorized groups and groups that are usually left out.
Thank you. And so in addition to those ways of working and the shifts there, were there any thematic shifts that you would want to highlight that you noticed?
Yes, always within the mission of NORRAG, of course. So one of the things that we started in 2019, it's always about the mission, about thinking of those that are excluded, incorporating them. For example, philanthropy in education is a huge topic, but everyone thinks of Gates Foundation, Rockefeller, Open Society Foundations, but there are regional philanthropy, there is local philanthropy. So we decentralized the topic. We showed there is a specific brand of Chinese philanthropy. There is a specific brand and the type of ed-tech philanthropy. And they all have different ways of working. They have different logics. They have different motivations for getting into that space. That's one example of a thematic. It's not a shift. It's just putting into effect what we believe in. Another example, and I'm quoting you, from buzz to fuzz, as you would say, public-private partnership, results-based financing, again, philanthropy and education, all buzzwords. And the more people use it, the fuzzier it becomes. It's good. It's actually, it is a sign, it's a success story. If a term becomes fuzzy, it means different people attach different meaning to it, and they fill it with their own meaning, but it becomes fuzzy. So we went into that space and we filled it with our own meaning. And this whole results-based financing brand, again, with the target of inclusion, is something that we have done very successfully, and we do it in all aspects of it, including the Abidjan principles, where we were one of the first signatories to believe that there is a need to discuss the role of the state vis-a-vis the private sector. And we were strongly supporting that initiative. And one of the books in our series is about the Abidjan principles. But also another buzz that went into fuzz is data and evidence. And usually in our type of organizations, it's used for accountability and reporting, and for global norm setting of national development, global monitoring of national development. It's always like this panoptical view that is used when it comes to data. We have changed that at NORRAG. And for us, numbers could be used positively if it is used to count the uncounted. If it is used to surface those that don't have a voice, that are not included. So the kind of work Patrick Montjurides at the time, but then Dan Shepard, you and others did in that field, is all about using numbers not for accountability and for reporting, but for surfacing groups that were neglected and counting them and showing that this is a big group that deserves. And we've done that. So the last activity was the Missing Data Summit. And there is much more work that is following out of this line of work. These are just examples. It could be endless. We have very good annual reports that explain everything with numbers and targets, etc. But this is just to give you a flavor of what have been some of the thematic areas.
Wonderful, thank you. And so in addition to those thematic changes, what about structural or organizational changes, Gita?
There were changes, both internally and externally. Internally, we really try to establish bodies rather than individuals. So there's continuity. We have an editorial board that Alex Traxler was beautifully managing, where we have input, because the NORRAG Special Issues is in 5 languages. But the regional editors, they're not just translators, they are thinkers, they are intellectuals, they are scholars. They are telling us what should be published, and they actively participate in that process. So, but also the new series, book series that we started with Elgar, this is all what the editorial board, and not just individuals, are coordinating and discussing and deciding. Same with the consultative committee. We always had a consultative committee. We take the role very seriously of the consultative committee. We share the budget, everything, and get input. So there were a couple of internal changes that we did, just to make sure there's continuity from one director to another and from one staff to another. The other one is an interesting development, and a good one for us. We are interestingly closer to the Graduate Institute than we ever were. We are still our independent network with more than 5,000 members, but we are also basically the global education center of the Graduate Institute. That means we are bigger than just NORRAG. We have all the resources, the intellectual resources, but also other kind of human resources and material resources that the Graduate Institute gives us. And this is something that it's new and very important to us, especially because the Graduate Institute is also based in the heart of international Geneva. The UN is like 5 minutes from here. So this link with the Graduate Institute is, and maybe that's the third actually structural change. We are more embedded in international Geneva also, and we take that link very seriously. You yourself did a very interesting study on the role of education in international Geneva, and I think that's a very important study that hopefully will be replicated in other places also. But so we had internal structural changes, we had within the Graduate Institute, but also we are closer to international Geneva.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, COVID also had a positive impact on our work. Because of COVID, we had to go online. We didn't travel. We didn't have to invite colleagues to come with visa issues, accommodation issues for international conferences. So the world got bigger for us, actually, and we were able to reach out many more. So now when we have meetings or webinars, we always have hundreds of participants, which is much bigger than when I started and we tried to do things face-to-face.
Definitely. Now, I know that the advancement of comparative policy studies in education is close to your heart. You have been president of the Comparative and International Education Society, CIES, the US Comparative and International Education Society, series co-editor of the World Yearbook of Education, and so much more. And you've helped in so many different ways to help to strengthen and expand the comparative study of education policy. Were you able to pursue this broader intellectual vision over the past 5 years?
When I came here, the graduate students were extremely interested in the field of comparative policy studies. There has been always a colleague, Alexandre Dormayer-Frère, who was teaching education. There were also other faculty that were every now and then teaching. You were teaching something on public-private partnerships, which included education. But I was the only full professor or tenure track professor in this field, but I was only 50%. And the demand was enormous of graduate students. So one of the big changes is under the new director, Moira V, there was an agreement to hire someone for 100%. And this is major. This is wonderful because it allows for continuity, and it's a tenure track position. The position is going to be held by Professor Chanung Beck, who is in comparative policy studies, and he will do an excellent job expanding this field within the Graduate Institute. So I'm very happy about that aspect of the work also, because that was one of the promises that I made to myself, in addition to strengthening NORRAG, to also strengthening the field of comparative policy studies.
And what about international cooperation and development?
That's actually NORRAG's space. And NORRAG had always an interesting mandate that it gave to itself. And its mandate was to make an impact on the international agenda, be a critical development, introduce a critical development approach, include experts from the global south, have a holistic view, not just reduced to primary school or literacy. So it always tried to influence international agenda. It went to all the big conferences, all the international agreements in the preparation, but then in the formulation, etc. We will do that, or you will do that in 2030, leading up to 2030. But now we are in the space in between. We are in the implementation phase. And that also needs a watch organization. And somehow we are a think tank, but we are also a watch intellectual think tank. Because right now, for instance, even though the SDGs 4 and 8, they're very comprehensive, but the SDG 4 tend to get reduced to learning, testing of learning, and other targets of SDG 4 tend to be forgotten. And the focus is also very much still on primary and now new on early childhood education. So NORRAG always had that view of lifelong learning, including vocational, technical. And we always had that view of not reducing education to literacy. And this is, I think, more important now than ever, because there's a tendency to reduce education to just learning and numeracy and literacy. And so there is a lot to work to do for NORRAG, because there is, especially now in 2022, we are 8 years away from 2030, and we are way back in accomplishing the goals. And there are a lot of international organizations that say, with funding sometimes from the private sector, the World Bank, OECD, others, that say we should focus on foundational learning, on learning, and that we should be more targeted. And I think we have to remind the community that other targets are important too.
Definitely. And finally, Gita, any unfinished agenda that deserves a mention? Any other last words?
Not really. I mean, there is always more to do, and I'm sure NORRAG will continue to flourish and grow more and be truly a network, an active network, committed to the mission that we have. The only unfinished agenda is to thank my colleagues, thank you, thank the staff, but also the wonderful consultative committee that we have. And very important to me is I would like to thank Alex Draxler. Alexandra Draxler, she was from the beginning very supportive. I consulted her at every step of the process when I was not sure. She was also the institutional memory for me. So she reminded me what NORRAG was all about and all the important developments it has made. So I would like to end this meeting with you with thanking Alex for all her support.
Absolutely. And so while your role as Academic Director of NORRAG ends in a few days and you'll return to Columbia University as a faculty member in the Comparative and International Education program, we are very pleased to know that you will remain actively involved at NORRAG and the Graduate Institute for specific project activities, notably the Knowledge and Innovation Exchange, the KICS initiative, where we're the host for the Europe-Asia-Pacific Hub, and also for activities related to UNESCO. And Gita, it has been an honor and a pleasure to work with you these past 2 years since I've been Executive Director. You leave NORRAG in an excellent state and in very good hands with a team that you have assembled. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Moira. Thank you.